Kia ora everyone and welcome. This is Firaxis Games and 2K's newest title, Marvel's Midnight Suns. And if you didn't have the patience to sit through 30 minutes of livestream preamble, hey, waiting for me for 2 minutes isn't so bad anymore, then let me bring it all together for you. I'm going to show you the key moments of this 1 hour livestream gameplay reveal for this new tactical strategy game coming from, like I say, the developers of some fantastic titles like Civilization 5 and crucially XCOM. And that is because this game, Marvel's Midnight Suns, many people at least will think about it as a crossover between XCOM's tactical sort of RPG elements, shooter a little bit too, mixed in with a broader Marvel franchise and series. You can see here absolute XCOM vibes coming out of this map and gameplay, but with that Marvel twist. Right here is Doctor Strange attacking some very generic thug-looking enemies, and you can see as well that there are certain abilities, and they're upplayed a bit more than we're used to actually in XCOM, but you can see them down the bottom there as sort of cards along the map. Each hero seems to have their own abilities, which we would expect, but how does this play out more broadly? And what are my initial reactions, impressions, and feelings about merging a massive, massive pop culture franchise like Marvel with the expertise and video game development style of Firaxis? Let's jump in and talk. So, also here I should note, you saw a little bit of character customization. That's another important element of this game, in that you can, of course, develop your own unique characters and play through missions. Speaking of, here's some more gameplay of missions and of characters interacting with one another. Healers, aggressors, tactical planners. We expect that from XCOM, and it looks like it's going to be carried through into this game. So how do we expect it to play? Well, at an individual level-by-level basis, we expect to see this. Customized characters, Marvel heroes, and perhaps others, pulled together into teams or squadrons. You then send those squadrons into individual levels or missions, as they usually are, to achieve an objective. Maybe it's extract a character, or defeat the enemy and push them out of this part of the city. Whatever it may be, that tends to be how these games play, these tactical RPG shooters, and really, you can't go past the fact that this is an XCOM game. And I think nobody should be fooled by the fact, I mean, look at it. This has got XCOM vibes through and through, but with a Marvel twist. A Marvel twist that not only delivers perhaps more interesting and engaging characters, but also a broader sort of superhero setting. But I don't want that to necessarily put you off. I should note here, I have no affiliation with this game. I have no inside information. This is not sponsored or anything in any way. At the minute, I am just covering the gameplay reveal, right? Just really to bring that home, because I know there'll be a few of you who will think, oh, he's sold out, blah, blah, blah. Nope, not at all. This is my opinions. So, back to the content. I think here is another interesting point, because you can see more XCOM gameplay play out, and more broadly, I'm concerned a bit about this ultimate crossover. And some of you did note this last time in my last video where we just really heard that the game was announced but didn't see any actual gameplay like this. It's an ambitious crossover, and it's one that historically has not necessarily always gone well. I'm not talking about Marvel meets XCOM. I'm talking about big franchises coming together. When you have a big pop culture, movie, comic book franchise coming into contact with a video game franchise. The two that haven't had a lot to do with each other are now crossing over, and historically, I think when this has happened, these games haven't always been great. There aren't a huge number of, say, DC superhero games or whatever that have done a good job at being good video games. It is hard to straddle both. The second point I want to make here as I delve into some of my more reflections and impressions, and indeed my personal opinions, is that I noticed throughout this, there's a stronger element on story and choices. You might have seen 3 or 4 times already they displayed, and they talked about this during the live stream as well, your character or your sort of overall ability as the leader of the game to make important gameplay decisions that impact your team. And I like that quite a lot. I mean, you can see here's a cut scene between Tony Stark initially, now Magic, these characters, and here you can see different voice line options. How does this play out in practice? Well, I suspect Basically, it'll happen like this. So as I described, individual levels are missions. You send your team in, you control them at the third-person perspective, send them through the game, they fight with enemy characters, and hopefully you can achieve your objectives. On the wider level, though, this game will work a bit differently. Like this. Take a look. This is your character walking through the sort of home base. Here is mission control, and that's what matters. Now, through mission control, you're choosing your team, and that's how it'll play out more broadly, okay? You will, as the sort of controller, the as it were, not faceless controller, because you will actually be able to create your own character and walk around through the sort of quote-unquote control room, you'll set a more broader arc to the story. So it's not just individual missions where you click and send a superhero to fight an enemy or what have you. It's a broader control. A control system where you have equipment to unlock, potentially technologies to research. But more than that as well, you have relationships, arguably between characters, but I think that'll probably play out more as a numerical thing. This is not necessarily a strictly story-driven game. Many players will be coming to play the elements I've discussed. Maybe you want to come in and just play the battles. Maybe you're interested in the more broader sort of control room aspects where you plan out which missions you'll take next, which equipment you'll research, how you'll kit out your heroes or characters, and so on and so forth. So it does attract sort of different styles of gameplay and pulls them together into one place. Now, crucially here, in the last sort of minute and a half of the video, I think it's important that we discuss how is this going to play out in practice? What is the timeline here? And what do they need to do to make it a success? And again, this is just my opinion, but I think, so at the moment it's September and we've received the gameplay reveals. The game is due to release in really only a few months, early next year. So clearly Firaxis have been working pretty hard on this bad boy, so maybe that doesn't put our hopes very high for a Civilization 7 announcement, but with Humankind having just come out, maybe that's not a problem. Anyway, back to the game at hand. I think that their strategy here really ought to be leaning in heavily on one hand on the Marvel front, but in the other hand on the tactical shooter, because I know that there are many of you who may have looked at this video. If you've made it to this point, probably not. You've probably already clicked away if you're this person. But many people will just think, Marvel, not interested. I would encourage you to think about it more as a new XCOM game. That's how I'm thinking about it. Yes, it's got this wonderful Marvel overlay, which personally I quite like. I'm not a massive Marvel consumer necessarily, but I don't mind a good Marvel movie, right? I don't go out and read all the comic books, but I can appreciate the lore and the heroes. You got to admit, these productions are impressive, and the world building around it is impressive. Whether you're a fan or not, this franchise is a big franchise, and with that comes fans, comes support, comes money, comes development, attention, all of those things that a successful video game needs. So hopefully, the developers here, again, 2K and Firaxis, will be able to come together and really merge the two into one. But overall, if the superhero thing doesn't get you, doesn't really float your boat, think about this as a new XCOM game. That's how I'm approaching it. I'm looking forward to following its release pathway and probably covering it a little bit here on my channel. Until then, everybody, take care, and I'll see you next time.